Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Fundesplai. It's the foundation of Fundesplai. Welcome to you, the headquarters of Fundesplai. So it seems that up to the age of 5 or 6, boys and girls cannot distinguish between leisure and advertisement. What does this mean? Well, it means that they pay the same attention to commercial ads and TV programs. And it's not until they turn 8 or 12 that they truly understand the goal of advertisement, even if, of course, they are still highly vulnerable to the stimulus and the impact of commercial advertisements. And this is the case because youth and childhood has become the target of food advertisement industry. A report by the European Commission determined that on average, children and teenagers in Europe watch around 5 advertisements on food and drink every day. And it's not precisely healthy food and drink. That's cookies, chocolate, fast food, sugared beverages, and of course, cereals, as you see on screen for breakfast. And all of this is without bearing in mind all of the other impacts that they and we receive daily in other contexts, on the internet, in supermarkets, and a long list of etc. So to talk about all these topics today, we have with us Aitor Sánchez. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure once again to have you with us. As you all know, Aitor is a nutritionist, a dietitian, and a food technologist. He started off specializing in the field of research when he was writing his PhD thesis in several centers at the University of Granada, the Bristol University, or the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. In 2011, he started being a scientific communicator through his blog, dietician-nutritionist. He is also the author of several very successful books, Mi Dieta Cogea, Mi Dieta No Cogea, or his most recent book, Your Diet Can Save the Planet, Tu Dieta Puede Salvar el Planeta. Right now, he collaborates with several media, and he is the co-founder of the Aleris Nutrition Center in Madrid. In the last 10 years, he has been a trainer and educator in several youth centers. He likes to define himself by his two passions that are food and education in leisure, which we, with the Scouts, which we celebrate. At Fundesplai, for more than 50 years, we are highly committed to achieve a better future for all. And in this process, we are, each and every one of us, an essential part. But having access to knowledge is essential to make this possible. So once again, thank you very much for telling us what we will learn and discover on what hides behind food advertisements, because at the end of the day, the fundamental issue at stake is how can we protect children's and teenagers' right to health. The conference Advertisement, Food and Childhood is part of the EUKI para en Taula pel Clima project, which is shared with the Umanotera Association in Slovenia and 50/50 from Greece. The EUKI project is supported by the Climate Action Commission, and with Aitor's commission, we will start a campaign here at Fundesplai called No Paso, meaning I won't take that. It's a collective action that will bring together more than 10,000 children from different schools and different leisure centers, framed within the celebration of the rights of the child held on 20th November. With this campaign, No Paso, we want to reclaim the right to health, the right 17 on the Convention on the Rights of Child, that is the right to receive true information, and we want to say that food advertisement targeting children must somehow come under control. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Aitor Sánchez. Let's give him a round of applause. This evening's session. Thanks, Aitor. This evening's session is divided in two parts. Now he will take around 20 minutes to tell us about some issues on the topic of today's session, and then we will continue with an interview by young journalists who have many concerns and worries with regards to this topic. And I'm sure they'll come up with very interesting questions. Thanks so much, Aitor. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Fundesplay, for inviting me once again to be here. If you'll allow me, I will speak in Spanish. I'm from Albacete in central Spain, and we have a terrible accent speaking in Catalan, so I'll switch to Spanish. I am convinced that the second part of today's session will be much more interesting, so I want to share certain general concepts on food and advertisement with you all, so that when we have journalists here in the future, so that you can ask the questions that you feel are convenient. I think you really identify them really well, because you've identified many of the topics that I thought of, so it's great. And also for those of you who are sitting here in the room, if you also have any questions, there'll be time for that. I think we have many students to be dietitians and food technicians with us. It's a pleasure seeing you here. I mean, for me, the profession is closely linked to the profession of dietitians and nutritionists, and your and our work is very much necessary, because as we can see, we have a lot to contribute to society. So it's a pleasure to see so many professionals here. And I insist, who says the opposite, they are really mistaken. So if you have any questions, we can discuss them later. Thanks for being here. Well, one of the fundamental aspects, I think, is that we must realize, I mean, many people are denying many things. People deny climate change. People say, where is global warming? Where is this pollution? I don't see it. And here at the headquarters of Fundesplay, you have a beautiful exhibition on Media for Impact, which precisely talks about climate change and how food can help us to mitigate climate change and to live in a planet that isn't as catastrophic. There are also people who deny the harmful effects of advertising. We've heard this in recent years, and I think it doesn't make much sense. In some moments, I've heard in bars and, at the bar, I've heard people saying, it's best not to regulate advertising. There should be freedom, and each should be able to be free to buy whatever they want. And companies should be able to share the messages they like. That's something we've heard. And do you know what happens when you don't regulate advertising, or when you don't regulate something? It's not true that there isn't freedom. When you're not regulating, you're leaving it all in the hands of the Wild West, of what's happening in the world. And if no one is regulating or protecting children from advertising, what we will see is sugary drinks, fast food, and grocery companies with their millions spreading messages where then you have small-scale food producers producing bananas or broccoli launching other messages. So it's false that there is equality or that there is a freedom of choice, because we are receiving this, and we've heard it in the introduction, we are receiving so many messages inviting us to eat unhealthy food, and very few messages encouraging us to eat healthy food. So this feeling of freedom is false. And I often wonder, how is it possible that people say that advertising doesn't have an impact? It's logical. It's common sense. If you think advertising wasn't influential, companies would spend millions in ads. Imagine I'm a drinks company and I say, okay, I'll make an ad for Christmas or the first day of the year, but no, it won't be influential for anyone. Of course it's influential. It has an impact. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend millions on ads and invest so much in advertising. In any case, even if it makes common sense, luckily, we also have scientific studies that prove this and that tell us that children, boys and girls, that are more exposed to unhealthy food And it's not only that they consume higher quantities of these unhealthy foods, which would be the effect, the most terrible effect. It's not that you say you like them or would like to eat them, but directly people who watch more ads of these unhealthy foods consume them in greater quantities, so it works. But it also changes our perception around food. It makes us want to believe that we need that food, even when we don't need it sometimes, and it may feel appetizing. So we consume it, but we also want it. And this is something we must bear in mind. Also, at the same time, advertising can be cruel because it doesn't have the same effect on all people in the same extent. For instance, if we are people who are readily predisposed and we have unhealthy habits, or if we live in a neighborhood where we have less access to healthy food, this ad will be even more harmful. It will be even more cruel. And we see this, for instance, people who consume ads and are affected by it when we are in a condition where we have unhealthy food habits. If I'm accustomed to eat industrial pastries every day for breakfast, and then I see ads for industrial pastries, then I'll be more sensitive to this. I'll be more affected by those ads. So it's a circle that reinforces its strength, and this happens among the most vulnerable sectors of population. If on top of this we have a group of population that advertising companies target the most, it's children, with no doubts on this. Of all the ads you watch, most are for children, unhealthy children's food. And this is something we have to look at, because when it comes to healthy food for children, it's the same food for adults, exactly the same. Do you think in the 1300s they had pots of blended food, or do you think Marie Curie was given baby food? No, there was regular food ground into small amounts, but the adverts have made us consume special products. With children's food, look at what's happened. The food is no longer relevant. It's no longer important. The food itself isn't important. What are you buying here? You're buying the packaging. It's basically a toy. And Susana brought me an example in case I wanted to use this. So this is a box of biscuits we have here, chocolate biscuits. We don't even know what the ingredients are in these cookies. So we have a box and we have a character on the box. Homer, Simpson, on the box of cookies, where we don't see the product, and where on the front of the packaging we see a series of messages to calm families down, I call them. It's a packaging that targets children with the Simpsons and families alike. It says it has 8 vitamins and 5 cereals. With baby food, it says 5, 7 cereals. Who knows the names of those cereals? So it could be wheat, rice, sorghum, 7 cereals. People don't know the names of 7 cereals. Give me more vitamins, give me more iron, add everything you can, because it seems that the more, the better. So we have lived with advertising and marketing that is targeting children, which is totally separated and alienated from the actual food the packages contain. So we've created a monster, Godzilla, called a children's menu. We don't know what it is. Apparently it's yellow, fried, breadcrumbs, where we hide things in, basically. I like to say it's the menu to avoid discussions. Give them a croquette, give them breaded chicken, give them everything nice and fried. It's always yellow, French fries, whatever, for adults to be able to relax, right? So they can, it's food, finger food or forks, as if you weren't able to pick up healthy food with your fingers. But they've created this monster of children's products, which, as you can see, and I think any technicians in dietetics can say carefully, may contain traces of vegetables. You may not even take a gram of fiber. We see there's many superfluous ingredients, low quality hydrocarbons. The protein is unhealthy. There's cold cuts, transformed fish, vegetables. I mean, if you're not allergic, there's no problem having vegetables. So we can't consider these menus healthy. And this constant bombardment comes from the earliest stages of life. From the moment you are born, that you are launched into a hostile world where, from a very early age, advertising and grandparents and families, when we go out and look at the bus stops, or when we are on screen and we see what comes up on TikTok and YouTube, all of the elements talking to us of children's food, which is a 360 model because it is everywhere around us in all formats. So this starts bombarding us with children's food, and children's food doesn't exist. We could say aubergines, mandarins, artichokes, could they be children's food? No, they're just food. However, everyone will say, yes, it's a children's food because it has Homer and Lisa Simpson. So they make us believe that children need special types of food. And it even conditions the recommendations that healthcare providers give sometimes. I'm sure that if you've had a child recently, those of you who are here, or if you have a nephew or niece or a cousin, I'm sure you will have seen that very often baby food is built under 3 pillars. Milk, blended food, and purees. Why shouldn't they be able to eat food, proper food? I mean, what did children eat before we had these blended foods? They ate normal food, and we've made to believe that children's food is very complex and difficult and has to follow strict rules, when in reality it makes common sense. You have to be careful that the child won't choke on food, that they can manipulate the food, to see the signs that they're ready to eat proper food. And then you have to introduce food progressively to avoid allergies. But it's not that difficult. But they make mothers and fathers believe that everything is very difficult. And what I find more horrifying is that they make you feel a bad mother or a bad father, because they tell you that unless you buy Megamax Ultra Power milk compounds, which costs peanuts, they're telling you that you're being rusty and that you don't love your child enough. That is what we see on ads. An ad saying, do you want to help your child to overcome obstacles? And you say, no, I don't. I want them to fall down the stairs at school. I mean, in the school, in the advertising, you see a child climbing some stairs. They say, do you want to help your kid? Are you worried about their health? Are you worried about their neurodevelopment? So they make you feel bad, so that you end up buying children's foods which are unnecessary and which in most cases are not even healthy. Also, these children's food, they are intense. Are they palatable? It's like a boom of sugar and salt, easy to chew, homogeneous. And as everything is so intense at a high level, comes a time where you feed your child a cucumber and they won't eat it. They'll give it to you. And they say, no, I want my potted food. It's normal when you've been conditioned from a young age. And it's neither helpful to see that we are exposed to so much food. And we've normalized children's food that have won the battle, I'm afraid to say, for breakfast or a mid-morning snack. What do people have for breakfast? Biscuits, cereals. And I always like to say one thing. When I give a conference, I like to say that for a family, the most dangerous word is when they say, and so, for instance, when we are giving a session to families, they say, well, biscuits are not that healthy, morning cereals aren't that healthy, they should have something else for breakfast. And then they say, so what should I give them for breakfast if it's not biscuits? We have very few resources it's become so normalized that we should have biscuits for breakfast that families are left totally helpless when you take away these ideas from them. That's what happens. I mean, in the world of biscuits, they were included into a breakfast time by overexposing families and children to ads or biscuits. Do you imagine preparing breakfast at home one day and you call your family and you say, hey, darling, breakfast is ready, and you have a bowl of flour in the kitchen, a bowl of sugar and a bowl of sunflower seed oil? It's unthinkable to have these 3 ingredients for breakfast. It's totally unthinkable. Who would prepare this for breakfast? What happens is that they package it as a biscuit, you normalize it. I say a biscuit, but it could be chocolate croissant or anything. It is all packaged in plastic with a fun character outside. They give it the shape of Hello Kitty. And they say, okay, this is for kids. It looks like Hello Kitty. And the whole classroom eats these biscuits. And then we forget about the ingredients and we just normalize these biscuits. And we've forgotten about this. We've forgotten, you know something, children are miniature human beings. And as human beings, they can eat the same food that human beings eat. When it's time for mandarins, aubergines, rice, sorghum, meal, and all of the other cereals, the names of which we don't know. This is the cruel side to children's advertising. If you want freedom, here's freedom for you, a freedom that won't even allow us to find a healthy breakfast for our children. And then there's this added effect in people and children who are already predisposed to junk food. That is why I like some ideas and projects. Here you see a photographic project that I use with teenagers and children. I always recommend it to scouts and to people from leisure centers, or if you work in leisure activities. This project is What Do Kids Eat Around the World? Is the name of the project. And I really like it because with a simple picture and photograph, you can see different food cultures. And it's also a way of avoiding preconceived ideas. When I go to school, I say, where's this girl from? And they say, from China. And then they discover that Asia has many other countries. Where's this boy from? Africa. Well, it's very good also for them to know that Africa isn't a country and that there can be nuances, just as they share the leisure of a girl from Monaco and what that girl eats with different cultures. There's another issue which is cross-cutting and is very visual when we explain these things, and that is that we can clearly identify when we see healthy food with raw materials, fresh produce that's readily available. And we can even see how gradually in the same countries, like this boy and girl who live in the same country, they'd be examples from Italy, you have some choice in the family and you can. I mean, it doesn't all depend on the country you live in. It'll depend also on how well informed you are, the city you live in, the context or the neighborhood you live in. And even within these different choices, that you can make these choices be more or less healthy. I think it's good to remember when we believe that breakfast should be biscuit and we see a girl in Burkina Faso is eating fruit and that a boy in Osaka is eating fish soup, or that a boy in Mexico is having really spicy food even if he's only 9 months old, and a girl in Costa Rica is eating beans for breakfast. So that then when we say, oh, I don't know what to give my kids for breakfast, but you can give them food, whichever food you like, as long as and if it's healthy, all the better. And then within this advertising, we must recognize that from the old-fashioned model with on TV and radio and packaging, we've now given a leap forward, a very big leap forward, because now we consume adverts, especially children, with our finger, with a click of our feeling. We scroll through ads. You go on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, and you look at ad after ad. Very often these ads are just ads. Other times we find ads in that times when we were not expecting this. Before, whether you like it or not, maybe you were watching a football match on TV or film, there was a break for commercial ads, or you saw ads in the football field for Heineken beer, or you're looking at the Olympic Games and you see a banner saying Coca-Cola, and you know it's advertising. It is conditioning you, but you know it's ad. Or you stop, the series stop, and it's time for adverts, and you look, oh, cars, biscuits, dishwashers, loans. You see this, but now you don't. With the content on social media, it's very difficult to know what is and what isn't an ad and how we're being conditioned. If you start watching a series on Netflix and you see this series has a product placement, for 3 years, I've been watching series on Netflix and how wine is included in all series with no real reason. So what am I doing? I'm bored, I'll have a glass of wine. I get home after work, I'll have a glass of wine. And as happened before with tobacco, this is a conditioning factor for adults. And the same happens for children. You're watching your streamer or gamer, and they're drinking an energy drink, or they've stopped their stream to eat some Dorito snacks or to eat some donuts. Or maybe you're watching a program on the Spanish TV like Operación Triunfo, which in theory couldn't show adverts on TV, but on YouTube they are inviting you to participate in challenges. So we have two things. We have 360 advertising, as I said before, but also the people who are bombarding us with advertising, it's people who we wouldn't expect to bombard us with advertising, and it has a very dangerous side to it. Not so much with sports stars or famous people, but very often these ads are coming from our peers, from an influencer who used to be one simple person in society who ended up traveling and having hotels paid for them. And there are people like myself, but who advertise products that I don't even realize. Here I am eating some crisps. Here I am eating a Kit Kat. And we don't perceive this as an ad. Very often we're bad at identifying this and we think, oh, if she's eating a Kit Kat, maybe that's why she's so successful. Or maybe it's related somehow. And we have to be careful. I mean, sometimes they sell perfumes on TV that we can't even smell. And they sell them through the models, that fashion models that are advertising these perfumes. They say, no, this one is old, this one's for young people, this one has eyeliner, or this one. And that's how you identify with the perfume, depending on who is advertising this. And the same happens, exactly the same with food. And we enter into this new paradigm. I'm sure you've heard this, right? I'm sure. Have you seen the hashtag handle está pasando? This is happening in the content creation, in their lives, in the challenges where they try encouraging us to participate. Or what is even more cool, if you follow the whole season of a cooking program, which you may think is educational, and then at the end they pull out a chocolate bar with the winners, just in case you had any doubts. And then they try linking all these products with performance, with being a better sports person. But it's not the case, because they're using us. And you will say, okay, so instead of doing it with unhealthy products, they could do it with healthy products. And it does happen. There are some exceptions to the rule. I love this campaign from the bananas from the Canarias with Mireia Belmonte and Carolina Marin. I like it for many, many reasons. A, because they're women. B, because they're sportswomen, because it's a good practice, because it paves the way, it shows us the way we should be heading. But this is only an exception. For one of these ads, there are 100 of the other ads. And somehow this is what the World Health Organization was studying. The vast majority, more than 95% of the ads you see and receive of unhealthy food. And if we say, okay, let anyone advertise whatever they want, or if we don't control ads for children, those who will be launching ads are the large corporations that have all the money behind them. Because a small Mandarin company doesn't earn a lot of money because you can't get big margin by selling mandarins. They can get a big margin, however, selling sugar that is cheap by the ton, palm oil, which is cheap, flour, and you mix all this together, you come up with industrial pastries and you sell it for €1.50. That is where they make a true margin. So that is the industry that has more money and that can therefore make more ads. And unless we protect vulnerable population, we will continue receiving these ads constantly. Then we have a law which in theory should protect us, but it isn't, because it's systematically breached. And nothing happens, there are no fines, or there is always a way of bypassing legislation. Is this useful? No. Is it good? No, but I call it Kinder Bueno. Does this improve my digestion? But I call it Easy Mornings. Does it help digestion? No, it's called digestive. So why are you confused? Does Redu grass reduce fat? No. So all of these practices in theory should be banned, but we see them advertised constantly. So to wrap up this first part of my presentation, I'll conclude by saying that if we were to ask ourselves today whether it makes sense or whether it is necessary to control children's ads today, I'd say yes, with no doubt. First, because it's a child's right. Children have the right to grow up in safe environments and to receive information that isn't fake. So it's a children's right. This is enshrined in our law. So healthcare professionals who are asking for this aren't asking for a pipe dream. We're just asking for the law to be implemented and followed. It's targeting a very highly vulnerable population that we can't identify when we're exposed to these ads. In almost all cases, it's tricky. It uses health statements to confuse people by saying it has 8 vitamins. What does it mean that this has 8 vitamins? It means nothing. Those of you who will be dietitians in the food will know that saying it has 8 vitamins means nothing. It's like saying, hey, here's a house with walls and with plugs, painted walls. It's ridiculous. It means nothing. Something having 8 vitamins doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just ridiculous, like saying a house has walls. Well, the good thing about controlling ads is that, do you know how much money it would cost to control ads? Zero. All you have to do is wanting to control it. You don't need the big campaign to promote mandarins or campaigns to promote pulses. If you prohibit certain practices, the cost of this is very low and the effectiveness is very high, as we've already seen in other countries. So yes, if next time you are asked and say no, let them choose. And as I heard on Twitter, they say, well, it doesn't matter, children's publicity advertising doesn't affect them because the families choose. Yes, because if families weren't conditioned by what children want when they're kids, right? So anyway, I hope this first part of my presentation, and until we hear the question, I hope this gives us some argument so that next time when it's Christmas Eve and we're with our family in a family discussion and someone says that controlling ads is nonsense, we have arguments to say why we should control ads. Otherwise, we'll continue in the current context and things aren't going well. So we have to intervene to make things better, okay? So now it's your turn for questions. I'll listen to you, see if you agree. Okay, so now we will continue with the main protagonist, and that is young people. So you can come up on stage. I'll give the floor to Jean Cabo Masip, Avento Godinho, and Dante Piquet, who will be our interviewers. We have microphones for them here. There's not much diversity sitting around this table. But I will say that the other day I was interviewed by two 9-year-old girls in the radio, and it was great. So we'll combine them now. So what have we come up with? First question.
Primera pregunta.
I didn't know this was an exam.
Muy bien.
So how can we identify fake adverts? How can we identify a product that is unhealthy even if they tell us that it has vitamins? Well, it's a good question. Usually we can identify these ads when something looks beautiful and great. Usually, at least we should question this. If something is promising beneficial effects, if they say that a biscuit will improve your digestion, or that a glass of milk will improve your digestion, or that if a fruit juice will improve your defenses, or if a yogurt will stop you from catching a cold, stop and question this. Don't believe it. It's very often it's good to compare it with another product. So imagine, ask yourself, why is this juice so much better? If I had a regular glass of fruit juice at home or piece of fruit, wouldn't this be better? Simply compare it to something normal, but I find it very bizarre. Have you ever seen a detox smoothie that people say are great? And you think, okay, detox smoothies are great for our immune system. And I ask, are they not equally as good in a salad? Are they only good if they are put in a smoothie? Wasn't gazpacho the first detox smoothie? I mean, sometimes it's great to ask ourselves these questions. A study says this, that, or the other. Don't you realize that people are selling smoothies at 90 euros a week, and it's just the same as eating a salad at home without putting it in a liquefier? So we have to think, what does this look like? Is the Monster energy drink as good for performance? And my family drinking 2 coffees a day, they're not great at sports, right? So these are the type of questions we can ask ourselves, and we have to question the packaging and the ads we see. Healthy products don't tell us much. I mean, mandarins are really healthy and they're not there. They're saying they're great, broccoli is great, or chickpeas are great, and they don't bombard us with messages as the ones we see on these food products. So if a product needs to be sold, maybe perhaps it's because it's hiding something. That can be a tip for you. Very often YouTubers, TikTokers shows unhealthy food and drinks in their videos and pictures without us identifying this as an ad. Why is that a problem? Well, it has to do with what I was saying before. The problem is that you don't know if that YouTuber or that TikToker, you don't know if they're being paid for this, and it would be good to know this. It would be good to sort of say, I'm drinking a can of Fanta on this live video because I'm paid. So then you say, okay, so she's drinking it because she's paid for it. But very often they don't say this. That's illegal. That is ads that are fake, because we should know when we are watching an ad, always. And it's a problem not just because it's illegal, but because the whole time we're watching these ads, and you may think, okay, so this person I admire so much is drinking a lot of Coke or Fanta. I want to be like they are. So that without thinking they are influencing you, you may be influenced. And it happens to us. Sometimes I'm watching TV and someone opens a can of drink and makes that beautiful noise. You think, I'd love one now. Or you see an ice cream on TV. You think, well, I don't have one in my freezer now, but otherwise I'd eat a whole box of them. So we're always affected by ads. And being exposed to ads constantly means that we acquire these unhealthy food habits. Is it worse than explicit ads on TV? What do you think? Do you think it's worse or better? I think it's worse. Why? Tell me. Well, because as you said, it's illegal because it doesn't explain. We don't know. And you may not even realize it's ads. At least on TV, you know they're showing you a commercial ad. But on a Twitch, you may not know, right? You said earlier on that there were laws to regulate unhealthy food ads. Do you think if these laws were harsh and they were complied with, it would help to reduce the number of unhealthy food products on the market and the number of people buying them? Yes, I do. And I think so because this is what happened in other countries that have done this. Other countries have controlled and have increased the safe space for children. So they say, so at certain times of the day, when the young are watching TV, we won't allow certain food ads. Or in social media, we won't allow ads for certain types of products. And we know that when you control this, these products are not as consumed. That is why I said controlling advertising is a great idea because it's cheap and it's highly effective. So that is why I believe it would be a great measure. What is the easiest way to know whether food is highly processed or not? Well, I would say it's not so important to know whether food is highly processed or not. It's important to know whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Thinking whether this is highly processed or not doesn't give you much, but I'll ask you a question for the four of you. Are sugary drinks healthy? No. Is industrial grocery healthy? No. Are biscuits healthy? It depends. In general, are those biscuits that are healthy? No. Cold cuts healthy? If you don't eat too much cold cuts, well, that's another topic. You know why? Well, because, and I like you mentioning this, because some foods tell us they're not bad if you only eat them occasionally. As you said, maybe cold cuts isn't bad as long as you don't eat too many cold cuts. What I say is if food is, if they tell you not to eat too much of a food product, it means it's unhealthy. No one will tell you only eat chickpeas occasionally or only eat green beans, but always leave a balanced diet and do activity. They only say that for cold cuts, for sugary drinks, so there's a trick. So maybe one cold cut isn't as harmful as industrial pastries, but it's an example. So you know what a healthy and unhealthy food is. The fact that highly processed food in their majority are not healthy, it doesn't mean that we have to identify whether food is highly processed or not. What's important is to know whether food is healthy or unhealthy, not whether it's processed or unprocessed. You can have processed food which are healthy. For instance, gazpacho with good ingredients, or a vegetable puree with healthy, fresh ingredients. So that's really what we should be looking at. There are some exceptions. There are foods which are marked as highly processed and they're healthy, a few of them only. Some cheeses, tofu may seem highly processed, but it's healthy. Texturized soy is healthy and it's processed. That is why I say it's better to ask ourselves whether the product is healthy or unhealthy, not whether it's highly processed or not. That's a better tip. What are the keys to get youth and their families to minimize the impact of advertising on unhealthy food and to take better choices when shopping? Well, to minimize the impact of advertising, it may seem obvious, but one of the things that works best is not being exposed to so much advertising. And the means by which we get most ads today is by spending time glued to a screen. It's not about getting rid of our screens because it's because it's healthy, because instead of watching a tablet, you're doing other things, you're doing sports, or you're not looking at a screen in front of you, you can connect to the real world. Getting rid of screens can be very practical. And also when we go shopping, and this is families, shouldn't buy impulsively, have to plan what they shop. If you walk around the supermarket, walk around, I would always like to say that a supermarket isn't like an IKEA. You don't have to walk through all the passageways. You can just go and buy what you want and leave. But some people go to a supermarket as if they're going to an excursion. What is in the alcoholic drinks? Wine, yeah, great. Frozen pizzas, great. Oh, new biscuits for breakfast. Oh, and if you walk through all of the corridors in the supermarket, you end up taking many products back home. So it's a good idea to buy in local markets because they have more fresh produce and there aren't so many unhealthy options as in the supermarket. Anorexia, bulimia, and other food issues are very present in our world, especially among teenagers. Why do you think there's such high level of these health issues? Well, it is true that in the past 6 years and the last decade, there has been a growth of these food disorders. But in the past 6 years, these disorders have grown much more, not just food disorders. Food disorders is a label, I'd say. It's like a diagnostic. But what we are seeing isn't just food disorders, but that some people aren't having an adequate relationship to food. Besides what you mentioned, anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, which have a name, what we are seeing in our medical cabinet is people who feel ashamed for eating, who have negative relationships to food, who try compensating, they eat but then they feel bad. And this is closely linked to the social components. Society is highly influential, and one of the key aspects is that it especially affects young girls and women. It doesn't affect men and women the same. And this is because of all of the aesthetic pressure on women, all of those messages focused on weight, all of those messages on how our body should be, all of those messages focusing on how we should behave, all of those messages that have hypersexualized women telling you constantly how you should be. Even if there are also boys who have food-related disorders, it doesn't affect them in the same way. And girls are much more exposed to this cruelty. It's constant, so it's normal that the greater sense of insecurity, the more issues with self-acceptance of our body, and it's also linked to our relationship to food. It's never ending. Society is constantly bombarding girls and women. And in our medical offices, we have to deal with it in a comprehensive way because we see that girls are having these problems that in recent years are linked to the increase and peak in social media. Social media have opened the door to this world where you think you're seeing things that are real, which aren't. And you think, oh, look at this beautiful girl. I admire her, but it's all fake. It's all been pre-cooked. That trip isn't that great. The hotel isn't great. That body that you're seeing isn't real. Those habits in the gym aren't there all the time. So it only shows us one side of reality, which they want to normalize, but it's not normal. It's just a mask. It's like when you see actors and singers who look beautiful and perfect, that we're seeing this through the influencer in the village next door. They build a mask around them full of frustration. And if you're feeling low and you're just on TikTok hours on end, you end up feeling bad about yourself. And it can lead to a bad relationship with food. It's normal. So social media have a big impact. I don't have an answer to you because if you listen to experts and people who know a lot about the topic, it's not clear how to take action on this. But I think it is a big challenge. How can we use social media in a responsible way? You can learn a lot on TikTok. You can learn a lot on Instagram and YouTube, but it's also a window to content that isn't that healthy. So it's a difficult matter. why did you start off as a YouTuber, and why do you have so many followers on your YouTube channel? Well, when I started communicating on YouTube, I mean, many years ago, YouTube didn't exist. You may think I'm really old. I'm not that old, but we didn't have Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We wrote on blogs, on websites. And during the last 10 years, which is the years I've been a communicator for healthy food, things have changed a lot. The reason why I became a YouTuber, I'm not a YouTuber. I have a channel on YouTube, but I'm not a YouTuber. I'm a nutritionist, as it says on the screen, but I have a channel on YouTube, but I also have other things. I have a scouting group and many other things. I started communicating on YouTube because I think we should be where people want us to be. If we're not there, if we don't have dietitians and nutritionists, there will be someone else taking our space on that channel, sharing content. If we don't do it, someone else will talk about nutrition. So I feel it's a bit of a responsibility. It takes time and effort. You have to adapt to times. Maybe because of the way I am, I can record a video on TikTok or Reel for Instagram, or I can go on Twitter and record a video on YouTube as I will do this afternoon. I like it. It's a really easy and fun job to do. But this is also, social media have allowed people to explain things. You can learn a lot also on YouTube. I learn on architecture and I learn about music on YouTube. These are great tools. So I opened my channel on YouTube because I thought, okay, I think content on healthy food should also be on YouTube, so that if there are boys and girls and children who want to consume my content, to have it there for them. As to the followers, I don't have that many. I have a handful of them, but they don't stop me in the streets every day. I think it's because it was a time when nutrition wasn't talked about clearly on YouTube. I started communicating at a time, the adults will know this, when people came out on TV and said obvious things. They said strawberries contain vitamins, vegetables have potassium, and that's like saying nothing. So we started communicating to denounce this, complaining about things, saying, hey, be careful, we are being tricked through ads, be careful with this, they're telling us it's healthy and it's a myth, to break down people's mindsets. And that is when what I started to share became of interest, and I was lucky to people say, okay, why don't you go and explain this on TV or on radio? Why don't you write a book on this? It was about telling different things, which maybe now don't come as a novelty, but which at the time was. That is why I try talking of things that aren't talked of. Usually, that is why we're talking of advertising, because maybe it's not the main topic on social media, or maybe that's why last year I wrote a book on food and sustainability, because it isn't in the media. So I try that my videos and contents on YouTube to be related to what I think is important today. Do not repeat the same things over and over again. So that's what I try doing, at least on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you. Before, I wanted to ask a question. I have a dilemma, and it has to do with milk. Many people say that we shouldn't drink cow's milk because it contains lactose and lactose isn't good. So instead of drinking cow's milk, they will drink soy milk or oat drink or almond drink. What do you have to say about which is better in your opinion? Which would you recommend? Well, it depends what the goal is. Every person decides what they want to eat, right? If you prefer milk, you drink milk. If you like soy drink, then soy drink. But consuming one or another has an impact. Health-wise, milk from a mammal and soy drinks are quite similar. They have the same levels of protein, calcium, level of fat is similar in the conventional versions. The reason why now people are shifting to plant-based drinks isn't so related to health. Some are, but not because one is much more healthier than the other. It has to do with allergies or intolerances. If you don't tolerate lactose, people say, okay, so I'll drink a plant-based drink. If you have an allergy to cow's protein, some people who are allergic to dairy, well, they say, okay, I want to continue eating my cereal in the morning or having a dish with a sauce. There are vegetable, plant-based alternatives. One of the reasons, or two other reasons why people are consuming plant-based products are that plant-based alternatives are much more sustainable. They're less polluting for the environment, while producing dairy is much more polluting. And then we have people who don't eat dairy, and we do this because of our ethical convictions or our values. I don't consume dairy because I don't want us to exploit cows and kill calves to get the milk from the cows. That is the reason, another reason why people are consuming less dairy. It's not that milk is poisonous or dangerous or it makes us sick. So now many people are consuming plant-based drinks and yogurts for ethical and for environmental reasons. And what about veganism and vegetarians who don't eat meat? Vegetarians don't eat meat and vegans don't eat animal protein, right? So vegetarians won't eat animals and vegans won't eat anything coming from an animal. They don't consume. I mean, they wouldn't wear wool or they wouldn't use leather because it's more of a consumption choice. When we look at diets, vegetarians usually eat honey, eggs, and dairy. A vegan won't eat anything coming from an animal origin. That is the difference. Sometimes people will say, well, it's a bit of a tricky here because it's not the same having free-range chickens in your garden than the dairy industry or egg-producing industry. Many people continue eating dairy and eggs because they think, well, with milk and eggs, I'm not harming anyone. Many people think this and it's normal, but if you look into the matter, you will realize, for instance, that in order for you to drink milk, you have to get rid of the calf. Or in order for you to eat eggs, you have to get rid of the male chicks because the industry is only interested in chickens that lay eggs. So they get rid of the male chicks. So sometimes you realize that the vegetarian, that even if you are eating egg and dairy, leads to the death of animals. And some people, we try eating without harming our environment and without harming animals. At the end of the day, as you have a choice, you ask me, Aitor, what would you like to eat today? Meat, fish, or pulses? I say, well, today I'll eat tofu, tomorrow I'll eat chickpeas, the next day falafel, the next day texturized soya because I don't want to harm animals. That's what I try doing. And that is why there are many people who maybe won't move to a vegan diet, but who will eat less and less animal products to harm animals less and to better protect the environment. Okay, so a round of applause for our young journalists. Your questions were really interesting. And if you agree, we have about 5 minutes left for 2 questions from the floor. If anyone would like to use this occasion with Aitor here, if anything needs clarifying, or if you want to ask any other questions to Aitor, now is the moment to do so. So I have one raised hand here. If you can introduce yourself so that we know you. The foods sold in pharmacies, children food that is sold in pharmacies, are they regulated? Can you find the same unhealthy products in a product that is only sold in pharmacies? Is that understandable? Yes, there are some products sold in pharmacies like milk formula for children aged about 6 months old, which even if they're sold in pharmacies are unnecessary or unhealthy. We have to distinguish between what's sold in pharmacies, which is based on formula milk, when you're not breastfeeding a baby and you decide to give them artificial milk. That's a formula, replacement formula to replace their mother's milk. But as of the 6th month, when complementary food starts, there again comes into play where you have these continuation milk formulas. They are not essential, they're optional. You can take them or not. And they're just another food, as you could give a 6-month-old another type of food. The better formula milk, others that are worse for the continuation milk, we could discuss whether they're ideal or whether they're necessary or not. They're not the worst child's food. Then another thing is that whether they sell them to you as essential for a 7-month-old or 9-month-old, but their impact, and they're not as harmful as baby food, which is put there in front of us. What's the difference between a continuation formula milk that you find in a pharmacy or in a supermarket? Is one better than the other? No, there's no main difference. Just as pharmacies sell energy bars to slim down, creams which in theory help you lose weight, it's a lie. Products that will take away your fat from your breast or waist, it's a lie. I mean, pharmacies, I know it's uncomfortable, but pharmacies sell a whole bunch of products that breach the laws on food. But we have, I mean, you have large pharmaceutical industries which are very powerful. Pharmacies play a great role for society, but they are infested with pseudoscience. This is very uncomfortable for me coming from nutrition science, but pharmacies are flooded with pseudoscience. It's sad to see this, and I'd like to ask for the collaboration of our pharmacists to denounce these bad practices happening in their pharmacies. I know it makes money, but it's not good. Hi, I'm Uriol. I'm from the Canary Islands, and I've been working here in El Prat for some time with certain sports and education projects. I have a question. What diet would you recommend for people who do sports? There's a big discussion on people saying that if you're vegetarian, you won't have enough protein intake. Many sports people get rid of meat, but start consuming proteic milkshakes. What would be your recommendations? Thanks for that question. There is no ideal diet for people who do sports, just as there's no specific diet for certain diseases. We have to customize diets. What I can say is that there's a lot of unjustified fears or trends that make no sense. For instance, if a sports person stops eating protein and starts eating milkshakes, this isn't healthy or positive necessarily. We use milkshakes in nutrition because they serve a purpose. Let's imagine you're with a patient or a sports person who eats many calories, and if you give them more protein or calories, they will feel bloated. So I use a shake which, as you drink, doesn't fill you up, and it's a useful tool. Or if I give my sports person a scoop of whey protein or chickpea protein, they will be getting more protein with just a spoonful. It's a tool. But stopping to eat one sort of protein to eat replacement protein isn't justified for your average person who does sport. When people say that people who do sports and stop eating meat won't have enough protein, that's hey, you can consume protein from plant-based products. Then there's a lot of misinformation, people who don't know, who are ignorant and who don't acknowledge their limitations or don't want to recognize that they are mistaken or that they're still stuck in the 80s. But elite sportsmen with a vegan diet, it's totally compatible, but you have to plan that food in their diet well, as you would plan for any other sports person. Years ago, we didn't have elite sports people who followed a vegan and vegetarian diet because of lack of knowledge. And I also work, I know many people who work on elite sports campus. They tell me that more and more people want to be vegetarian and vegan, and that they're not allowed to do so in the campus, that they're discouraged, and they say, no. Even at professional levels in sport, or elite sports people, or within all of the sports person, those who are vegetarian have had to break down many barriers, because from an early age they were saying, no, you couldn't. When you had team match, they said no, and all the rest. And even then, with bad advice, little availability, and little technical support, even in spite of this, you have Venus, Serena Williams, Yoko, or Kilian Jornet, for instance, who are breaking records on vegan and vegetarian diets. So imagine if we'd had nutritionists in sports teams from an early age, it would be easier. By this, I'm not saying that the vegan diet is better. I won't fall into the game changers series saying that the vegan diet is best for performance. The question isn't that. Both can be perfectly compatible. So let's stop lying and saying, no, your diet won't be complete. It won't be much better either. And it doesn't have to be better. It'll depend on how that diet is designed. Okay, thanks very much. Time is up. I'm sure we could have spent much longer here. As you see, Aitor is highly didactic. Thanks for those uncomfortable questions. And yeah, you've given us many headlines. I wrote one of them down. Even if it seems obvious, I think we must remind ourselves that advertising leads us to believe that we need to eat special food. So a strong round of applause for Aitor. Thank you very much. And I do have a request for you. We would highly appreciate it if you could fill in our evaluation to improve. And please follow us on our newsletter and visit our exhibition, because in a few weeks we'll have other sessions. One will also be on advertising by Justicia Alimentaria. Thank you all very much and have a lovely evening. Pues ya está.